Hello, everyone, and welcome back. I'm RJ Kerr, and this is the 30th installment of Let's Write an Adventure, where we are continuing the second adventure that we started writing last time. In fact, this is will be our first session where we actually get into writing and out of the brainstorming process for this adventure. An adventure that is rapidly shaping up to be more of a campaign than a standalone adventure, which I think is kind of a cool project for us. Since we've kind of got the time and the space to do that and do whatever we want. It's one of the beautiful things about this, having these hours sort of allotted, is that we can really kind of spend it however we like. So, before we get into that, I just wanted to remind you that if you all enjoy my content and you want to join one of my games, you can come find my tables at startplaying.games/GM/RJ Kerr. You can jump into one of my ongoing campaigns there. I'm running right now two campaigns for D&D and one for Shadow Dark that I just put up there. Very interested in trying out Shadow Dark for, well, won't be the first time, but my first time DMing for some folks who are not like my best friends. Anyway, so shameless plug over. Let's go ahead and get into working on the foundation of this adventure. So I went ahead and took the brainstorming that we did last time. We did that over in Scrivener, which is a different writing app, or a different writing program, one that I use a lot, just kind of professionally, because it's really designed to just write in. But I went ahead and copied that over here to Notion so that we have a copy of it attached to our adventure. But just to kind of give you a primer, we were imagining what I'm kind of viewing as a domain of dread now, where the characters are entering this world through a gate that opens up during the blood moon. Um, and it's kind of a shadow valley world surrounding an enormous lake that has an ancient and crumbling city that's up over the rim and fills the bottom of the lake as well. It comes to a spire in the center. Um, and That we decided last time had a lot of sort of Atlantis kind of vibes to it. We talked about, let's go ahead and pull that up so we can go through it. Yeah, we talked about there being lost treasure, lost power, lost wealth and magic here, that there was an artifact that the characters were coming to find. We talked about how there would be the discovery partway through, perhaps, that the artifact has the power potentially to either free the people of this domain or destroy it, giving the players kind of this moral choice of what they want to do with it. Um, we came up with just a lot of really good ideas, and I definitely say because there was some great interaction in the chat last time, and both during and after, with some ideas on what we would populate here. So, one of the things that I want to do to get started with this, I think, is we're going to come back to the foundation of story structure, right? And so we have, our exposition, our rising action, our climax, falling action, and resolution. This is sort of your Freytag's pyramid, your basic arc of all stories. But there are other ways to conceptualize a story that still fall within this basic arc. And I think I want to use one of those other methods for this because I think it works really, really well. So um, we're going to be building this out using the story circle, which is an adaptation on the hero's journey as defined by Joseph Campbell, and later sort of illustrated for writers in the writer's journey by Christopher Vogler. Definitely worth a read if you're a writer and you want to tell some stories. Um, but effectively, it patterns kind of this universal cycle of the hero's journey. So the story circle is a stripped down version of that. It's a little more, I think it's just a little bit easier to follow and a little bit easier to write with. But there's 8 parts to it. And so we're going to create a campaign with at least these 8 parts. And so the first part is you, and we're going to talk about what all these mean in a minute here. But you have need, you have search, you have find, you have take. Oh, sorry. There's one I skipped. There's go. So it's you, need, go, search, find, take, return, then change. And so you is effectively your exposition. It's where you're establishing the situation. Now, in a narrative story, and what a lot of the material out there that talks about the story circle is aimed at narrative stories, things like books and movies and that kind of thing, um, where they would talk about you sort of defines the protagonist. But we, in this case, can use you, that first section, to sort of define the situation in which the characters find themselves, right? This is our exposition. We kind of use this to establish the world that they're now in. And so outlining kind of the context of this campaign. And so that's our exposition, right? Now, need is the identification of what it is that the characters are pursuing. Um, Now, it also can identify other needs. For example, we could use it to identify sort of what this world needs to change or be saved, or protect the material realm from this domain of dread, or what have you. Um, but this is where we're really kind of outline the stakes that are at play, right? What it is that the characters are really kind of dealing with, and that doesn't mean that we outline the twist here. It just means that we are sort of uh, deepening the plot, as it were. Go is where your characters are actually putting a plan into action and seeking out this thing they've identified as their need. Uh, so that's the initial stages of the plan. Search is kind of all the trials and tribulations that come along the way. Find is when is your sort of your pivotal moment at the middle of your story where the characters learn something vital, or they find something important, or they acquire something important. Take is where they take that information and they try to apply it to their situation. They take that item, they try to use it to solve what they've got going on. And return is sort of armed with this new information, this new item, what have you. You're coming back to sort of the beginning, and you're trying to create this change. And so in our return, we see kind of our climax of the story here, with our change being our falling action and resolution. And there's all kinds of examples that you can find online that will really kind of use a movie and break this down into its basic parts. You can kind of see how it works narratively. But I find that it actually works really well for D&D campaigns, or I imagine it would work for any tabletop role-playing game campaign. But I've been using it for one of my home games for my D&D campaign. And it provides, I think, a really cool structure that I think would work really well for this, with a little bit of adaptation. And so what we're going to do is, I think we're going to kind of start sketching out what would fall into each of these sections. And as always, we're going to jump around as we have ideas and we think of stuff. But you is exposition. I don't see this part being an adventure per se. I see you here being kind of where our characters are getting kind of lay of the land, um, where they're introduced for the first time to this world, and experiencing this domain of dread. If we were to liken this to something like Curse of Strahd, this is where they're plopped down, they step through the mists, and they are find themselves in the village of Barovia, and they don't necessarily have a quest yet, but they just kind of have this situation that they find themselves in. Um, Need, I think, can be an adventure. I think that that's where they can kind of start to learn things through doing and through action. And so we're going to put that into our rising action section here, although it's probably closer to like an inciting incident kind of vibe for what we're doing. So you could lump it in with exposition if you wanted. Go is definitely rising action. They're they have information, they're acting on it. Search is probably going to be a number of adventures and definitely rising action. Find is going to be a rising action, but this is where we're going to toss in our twist. So we talked about our characters finding out partway through that the artifact had the power to save or condemn uh, the people of this domain of dread. You know, giving them the moral choice of, you could release all the people here, release all this potential evil into the world, into the material plane, hoping that it's going to turn good because it's a bad situation. That these aren't bad people. Naturally they're sort of good people in a bad situation. We can release them and save them, or perhaps the players are worried that the evil of this domain of dread might spill into the material plane, and now they have the choice to destroy it instead. And so, you know, this is where that find moment is where we're going to give that midpoint twist. Is where they're gonna discover that moral quandary. And I don't know yet if they should discover the actual artifact itself at that point. I'm kind of leaning that maybe that they should, that perhaps they should find it and it needs some kind of activation. And so they have this time spent with it where they physically have the thing and they've got to carry it around and they're deciding what they're going to do with it because it forces them to take a direction after that. And it gives them sort of a tangible sense of progress as well when they actually physically have it. So I'm thinking that maybe they do. Take is, now they've got it, now they've got to do something with it. And return is when they're actually making this choice, right? And all of these, I think, are going to be at least one, if not multiple adventures, with change, of course, being our resolution, our falling action and resolution, where we kind of see the outcome of what has transpired here. So let's kind of start to break this down with just a little bit of just a few notes. Just a few notes. So we're just going to make some commentary on what's going to go into each section. Let's see here. The characters arrive in our DOD, our domain of dread. I think we're just going to call it our DD. We'll define that though. Our domain of dread, DD. So our characters arrive in our domain of dread and begin getting the lay of the land. Cool. That's all we know for that section at that point. Let's see here. Our characters discover that there exists an artifact of immense power within this domain. They discovered this via an adventure. Always better for them to earn information rather than have it just kind of dropped in their laps. Okay. Go. Armed with the knowledge that armed with the knowledge of this artifact, the characters make a plan to secure it and follow their first lead. And how, do you ask? Do we know that they're going to go looking for this artifact? Well, we don't. We're going to assume. There's a strong likelihood, though. One, if you dangle a powerful enough magical item in front of your players, they're more than likely to pursue it, especially if they don't have other options. And if we kind of tie this artifact into the idea of that maybe this is how they escape from this domain of dread, then two, they kind of need it if they want to leave at any point. So, it's a safe bet that they're gonna go looking for it. Um, Again, if you were running this for yourself, and if you weren't entirely sure what direction your PCs were gonna go, you might kind of write these sections as you play, right? Instead of kind of doing them all up front. But we're gonna just assume, for the sake of this, that our characters are making the choices that are the most logical options, right? Um, Realistically, again, I will, for example, when I'm running this kind of structure for my campaign for my friend group, um, I kind of did a very rough outline of what I think is going to happen, where I think they're going to go, just so I've got some brainstorming points. But I don't write each section until we're, a session or two away from it. And then I'll sit down and work on it so that I can see exactly where the characters are leaning, and I know what the players are kind of thinking and what they've talked about and um, what they're planning on doing. So I don't waste a lot of effort. But since we don't have a table of players with us right now, we're going to assume that they're going to do what we think they're going to do. All right. So let's go to search. Um, let's see here. So the search is about trials and tribulations, right? So this is kind of where the plan goes to shit. Because no plan ever survives first contact with the enemy, especially in D&D, right? So, um, uh, I'm sorry, let's hear. We got a question here from Justin. What are you using right now to help sort everything? Is this a template or website? It's a template on Notion, and it is available in the description of this video. You can get your own copy there. I've shared this and made it public. You also can get it just off of my links on my channel. So there's no fee. It's completely free. It's just something I've made in Notion, and it really helps me kind of organize all of this. So help yourself. But I was just saying, the search is about the trials and tribulations. And so this is where the plan goes to shit, right? So this is where uh, the world kind of reacts to the player's efforts to change the status quo and tries to get in their way. It also, to me, it implies, I think, that we need a villain of some kind. You don't always have to have a villain for your adventures. I mean, you don't necessarily have to have something, um, and that you don't have to have a big bad, right? Is what I'm saying. You don't always have to. However, in a story like this, the personification of kind of the evil of this land, I think, is a good thing to have. Um, you see that in a lot of sort of adventures of this ilk, um, because it works. And so maybe we have one, maybe we don't, but it's something that we should think about here. So let's make a quick note. This is where the plan goes to hell. And thank you, Amanda. I'm glad you're enjoying the template. I'm really, actually, it makes me really happy to know that people are using it and you find it helpful. So thank you. All right, so this is where the plan goes to hell. The world around the characters reacts and attempts to maintain status quo. And when we phrase like that, it sounds a little artificial, but really the world is always kind of trying to maintain the status quo. Anytime you try to change the world, it kind of pushes back on you. That's what makes it difficult. And this is just kind of a summary of these. Let's see here. Okay, So let's get into find, and here's where the twist comes in. Twist. The characters find the artifact they are looking for. They also discover the artifact's use offers them a choice. Release the inhabitants of this domain of dread and risk this evil escaping with them, or destroy the DD and everything inside. Dun dun dun. Yeah. So so this is where they're kind of hit with this choice, and I think this is where they're going to find the artifact. I think that just makes useful sense to me here. Then we have take. So again, the characters have got to come up with a plan. And so let's see. The characters now armed with this artifact. And their knowledge of the power of its powers must decide how to proceed and what choice they will make. Now, something along this lines doesn't necessarily lend itself well to like a dungeon kind of style adventure here, but this is where you can get the characters to have to make a choice by having, this is where a big bad comes in handy, where you have a villain who is pursuing the characters, and kind of trying, making them make choices, making them take actions, where kind of driving them to make a decision as opposed to sitting around and talking about it. And so this is probably likely what I would call a reactive adventure, where stuff happens and the characters have kind of got to deal with it. Um, because really the thing that we're trying to do is get them to make choices and make decisions at this point. Um, and the stuff that's happening is really just there to be a catalyst, to get them to kind of choose the new heading. Because um, the return segment here is the characters have made a choice about what they will do with the artifact and must now act upon it. And that isn't rising action, that's our climax. Silly me. Cool. And then last, this is where we see the change their decisions have wrought in this world and the material plane. And so again, this is change is more of a narrative section, where we're kind of wrapping things up as opposed to an adventure. Okay, let's check the chat here real quick. So we got a couple comments. That sounds awesome. I'm working on. Oh, great! I'm so glad to hear that so many people listen to this and work on their campaign prep. That makes me really happy to hear. And let's see here, Jonathan. I was thinking about factions to go along with hard choices. What about an Aboleth versus a Slod as leaders of major factions, both evil, but the Slod is chaotic and the Aboleth is lawful? I like that. I am a big fan of Slotty. They're just kind of weird enough that they really kind of tickle me. And I love working them into adventures. Um, and aboleths are another one of those sort of manifestations of kind of alien intellect, which I really enjoy, because especially those kinds of creatures, both aboleths and slotty, is you have sort of I think they give you a lot of room to kind of play with because they're so different from your typical mortal in terms of their thought process that you can have them make kind of bizarre choices, um, and come up with really off the wall sort of things that feel more natural because they are so alien in their intellect. But yeah, I like the idea of including them in here. We'll figure out where we're going to put them. Um, let's see. Where was I? Okay, yeah. So we have, uh, yeah. So we've kind of jotted down some quick ideas here. As usual, there's kind of two. I think there's really kind of two modes when you're starting something fresh like this, and you're kind of trying to figure out how an adventure is going to take shape. Um, And in like fiction writing, you call this kind of like plotters and pantsers, right? And the idea is that pantsers are people that just kind of do this big brain dump, right? Where they just kind of sit down and they write, and everything that's in their brain comes out on the paper, and they have all this content, and they go back through and they kind of shave it away until it shapes it into the thing that they're actually trying to make. And then plotters, it's a lot more of they have little ideas and they sort of take this kind of like these bullet points and they build them up and they expand them over time until they kind of grow out into the adventure that they're trying to create or the story that they're trying to create. And I tend to be more of a plotter than a pantser, but either one works. And the technique is fundamentally the same. Whereas instead of, I'm putting bullet points down here, if you're more of a pantser, you might sit down and kind of do a full brain dump for each of these items on here, as you kind of explore all the possibilities of what you might do, and then kind of go back through and just kind of cut away all the excess. Um, I unfortunately don't work that way. I don't know if that's unfortunate. I just don't work that way. So I'm going to be doing more along the lines of what we have been here. So we've got a couple bullet points down for each of these, and we've talked a little bit about needing a villain. So let's put one down. Let's um, let's just go ahead and add a table for factions. I think that's a really good idea. I think we really need some factions. So let's say table view database new, and let's see here, factions, and let's pump that up under NPCs and monsters, and let's say aboleth. Did I spell that right? Yeah. Okay, aboleth led faction. We'll come up with a name for it later. And Slod led faction. So as far as the villain goes, I have kind of a bizarre idea for this. And maybe it's one we want to follow, maybe it's not. But I kind of imagine a villain in this case that's sort of the personification of the environment itself, that is like the weather and the water, that is uh, more elemental in its nature than, say, something like, like, again, use the Curse of Strahd example because we're doing kind of a Domain of Dread thing. Um, Strahd is, yes, he is the land, as they mentioned in there, but he is a more physical entity. He's an undead creature, he's a vampire, right? Well, I'm thinking maybe we have one that's more of an elemental, something that's more of that really does pull in more of the earth, land, and air, um, of this environment because they are such big factors at play here. Since this all takes place in and around what I've been describing as a lake, but really is probably more of like an inland sea if we think about it. Especially if we're going to make this a campaign size sort of adventure. Um, so let's make this. Oh, thank you, Jonathan. I appreciate that. Elemental villain. And I'm just gonna. I'm just gonna say for his notes, I am the land. I am the sky. I am the sea. Because that will kind of help me remember kind of the core of what he's about, or what it's about. I guess elementals, we don't need to assign them a gender. All right. Let's see. Where do we want to go from here? Let's talk about some of the locations, I think. And let's move this one up, because I think that's going to be more pertinent to this adventure than items. So we're... So we know we talked about having the Citadel as a settlement. And I know I talked a little bit originally about just having the Citadel as kind of the only settlement. And the more that I think about that, the more I don't like that. The more I think that maybe we need to have, you have the Citadel kind of in the middle of this kind of inland sea, and then we have maybe some smaller, sort of post-apocalyptic kind of style settlements, kind of scattered around the rim of this inland sea, out of the ruins that have sort of rised up out of the water. So yeah, so I think we probably need 2 or 3 little post-apocalyptic villages. So we're just gonna call them PA villages. PA Village 1. 3 is just a good number in general. When in doubt, choose 3. You're not going to go wrong if you choose 3. Okay. We can always reduce that number or expand it as we need to. But then we can have we can kind of have them littered around the rim. We have to give each of them kind of their own feel to it, but we could have one that's mostly like Kuatoa, and we could have a little bit of, odd sort of god worship going on there, and a little bit of sort of the bizarre divine magic that kind of comes along with that. We could have one that's a little more Sahuagin. We could have one that's, maybe more sea elves, that kind of deal. Or we can make them kind of cosmopolitan, where they're all kind of a blend of various different kinds of people. Let's hear, Justin. How about one of the villages was in the middle of the faction fight, and the survivors caught between the two factions hid underground, and started a new society. Maybe they could be used to help. Yeah, always good to have some allies that we build in there. We do spend a lot of time focusing on bad guys, as it were, on opposition. But villages are a good place to find help. And so, yeah, we could have one that's kind of an underground. Yeah, let's see here. So let's say one that's underground, and sort of beneath the ruins. So we'll pull up that template there. And then let that load, and then we'll add it to the descriptor. Let's see here. Okay. An underground settlement, built beneath the ruins of the desolated city. Let's let's see here. The inhabitants are the survivors of faction strife, likely to be friendly to helpful adventurers. Cool. Gives us a little bit of information about them and about that. And I could sort of see this being kind of built out of, you know, wet, dank caverns on the rim of kind of this bold crater that forms this inland sea. Yeah, I like that. Cool. So let's see what else. Let's just go ahead and open these up and add the templates into them just so we've got them. I imagine the Citadel is kind of it, it was probably like when this oversized city, this sprawling, metropolis, was, a thing, when it wasn't a flooded ruin of what it is now, a desolation of what it was. I think that the Citadel was probably like their central keep, right? It's kind of where the city started and kind of built outwards from that. And now it's just kind of like this spike of a spire that kind of jabs out of the center of the lake. And so let's see. The Citadel is a central spike like castle of many spires that stabs out of the center of the inland sea. And I guess a central spike and in the center is repetitive, so let's get rid of that. The inland sea, it is now home to a cowering populace. Okay, I can't spell today, apparently. Can I ever? Populace, there we go. It's a cowering populace of scavengers living in the ruins. Let's see here. Jonathan, I smell rebellion in that. They could be organized by the PCs and become instrumental in saving the place, saving the plane. Nice idea. Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. And that's really kind of the key of which Jonathan, Justin, what the two of you are doing right here is really kind of the key of what we're kind of getting at. We're putting tools and toys out here into gameplay that our PCs can leverage exactly how you're talking about there. They can decide that they're going to rally one of these villages and create some allies there and make, maybe they raise their own army or maybe they just get other kinds of help. Or we're putting those things in play here so that they have levers that they can use throughout the adventure. I really like where your heads are at. This is good stuff. So let's add a little comment. Rebels to support PCs? Question mark? Why not? Okay. Yeah, thanks, Shafe. I appreciate it. I'm glad you joined us. Okay. So, Citadel. Yeah, I think since it's probably so far away from everything else, I imagine that it's not as. I imagine it's a more dangerous place than some of the other villages here, and so kind of I have this vision of kind of this populace that's kind of stuck in the middle of the lake, and they're eking out this existence from from the ruins of the citadel. And uh, so, oh, I just had an idea. What if we have like, what if we have some floating islands out um, in this inland sea, and whether we have a settlement on one of them or adventure sites on them. What if we have sort of these untethered items that, or these untethered islands that kind of drift about, and we can have them move on kind of the currents of this inland sea. Um, let's add that. Um, yeah. Let's see here, chat. Forever DM. Unfortunately, I'm the Forever DM. Yeah, yeah, I'm the Forever DM of my friend group too, Justin. Uh, so it's nice to have you all here with me to kind of brainstorm and work through this stuff. And it's just nice to chat with other DMs. There's a lot of stuff that we all keep behind the DM screen that you never get to share with your group. And it's nice to have people you can talk to about it. So, um, and it's nice to work with DMs of all levels, because whether or not you're new, like you're saying, Amanda, that you're a new DM, new DMs have lots of great ideas because you have fresh ideas and fresh ways of approaching this. So, um, yeah, it's nice to have this space to be able to do this with you guys. Jonathan, like actual dirt or flotsam and wrecks clustered together that create islands. I was envisioning kind of like ghost ships that have been kind of lashed together potentially. Um, Ghost ships being like abandoned vessels that have just been, washed out, which by the way is a real thing. But so our seas have actual ghost vessels in them. It's wild. But that's what I was envisioning. But that doesn't mean that's what they all have to be. We could have actual floating like dirt kind of items, maybe made of like pumice or what have you, that is kind of very porous rock and will float a little bit. But the science major in me wants to come up with a way that this works physically. But magic is also a justifiable explanation for making some of these things work. But let's just start by saying we've got some floating islands, and let's open. We'll just put this in the comment here before we pick a template for this, because we might have a couple different versions. We could say floating islands made of ghost ships lashed together, or of floating rock like pumice. Pumas? No, that's pumice. Or held up by magic. Cool. One of the ruins of the broken city were frozen in time through some magical means during the fight, like during a magical explosion that launched sections off the ground into the air. Yeah, yeah. So you have kind of the earth moat kind of deal there. Yeah. Um, that could be, we could say, temporal anomaly. Why can't I spell? All right. Temporal anomaly holds some aloft. And that brings up a really good question of sort of like what created this domain of dread, right? Was this a cataclysm, or um, was this the result of some other act? For example, like again, coming back to Curse of Strahd, like the lore on that, right, is that Strahd was so evil and he made this pact with the dark powers, and they locked him away because of it, and they kind of locked up his domain with him, which seems really unfair to the people. but anyway, so so maybe we could have one where the villain is just so evil that they've kind of imprisoned him, and they've imprisoned all of the land that's surrounding this. Um, but I kind of like the idea of it being Cataclysm more. Um, that seems less dependent on this ancient evil kind of being so so influential in literally every aspect of this place. Um, so yeah, so maybe we need. So you know what? Since we're doing a campaign here, let's add another table. Let's add a lore table because sometimes we just need some lore. So let's say Cataclysm. Okay. This domain of dread was created by an ancient cataclysm that left the central metropolis a flooded ruin stuck in its own rotting demiplane and trapped with the evil entity that brought about the destruction. Cool. A couple sentences there, or I guess a sentence there. Um, and and gives us just a little bit of background on where all this came from. And I keep coming back to your idea, Justin, here about these sort of temporal anomalies because there's 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 an idea that it kind of dovetails with something that I hadn't thought about for this, but I thought about in other adventures and other aspects of my life, where there are places in the world where the weather just is so freaking similar day in and day out, and yet time still passes, right? And so to me, that's always been kind of, uh, I don't like it. It messes with me, right? Because you spend enough time there, and every day feels very much the same, and yet things are always getting just a little bit older. They're breaking down just a little bit. So I'm wondering if maybe that's kind of part of the hellishness of this place is that you know the the days are all the same, um, uh, but everything is just getting a little bit worse every single day. And so you know we'll always have those earth motes floating up in the air, but they're as they kind of trail through, they're crumbling just a little bit. They're dropping just a little bit of soil that's raining down on the land there. The buildings, or there's say the ruins that are already kind of destroyed, are already are rotting just a little bit more every single day. But you never have like a day that's particularly sunny or a day that is that's just ultra stormy, unless of course it's brought about by our villain. And that diffuse light that we talked about last time, that just kind of gives everything this kind of milk water glow to it, I think kind of lends itself well to that feel of timeless decay that I like for this. So yeah, let's toss that in. Now, how to word that? Let's see. Do 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 do. Cataclysm created a temporal freeze where every day here in every day is almost identical in weather, uh, but the world is slowly rotting around those who inhabit it. Uh, yeah, maybe some powerful mage who either died or hid himself or became the elemental evil. Yeah, um, that uh, that we talked about here, this elemental villain, perhaps. I'm a big fan of mages that become obsessed with power and then terrible things happen to them and they become monsters of their own creation. And I was thinking about the elemental. What if it shapeshifter into each element? Once it takes on an element, it takes on a different form, like salamanders are for fire. Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. I like that. Okay. Nope, not asking the AI there. Okay. Shape shifter takes on various new forms when it swaps between elements. Okay, yeah. And then, yeah, and even I could even see it, sort of blending specific elements, right? Like coalescing to create a storm that's a, blend of air and water, right? And so that having its own form. I like that. Um, uh, let's see here, Jonathan. Maybe the artifact has something to do with breaking that endless stasis and bringing sunlight or dawn. Yeah, absolutely. I think the artifact could, which reminds me, we need to create a block for that. Justin, like that one dude from Frozen 2. I haven't seen Frozen 2, so I couldn't say. I'll ask my nieces, though. They love Frozen. Maybe they can explain it to me. And we'll see. We'll see if we need to, if it's just a little too close. Um, but as it stands, I like the idea. All right, so let's see here. Artifact. Let's see here. An artifact with the power to release the inhabitants of the DD or destroy it. Brings, I should say, once activated, brings, what do we say, sunlight or dawn? True sunlight or dawn to the land. Okay. Probably needs some other power too to encourage the characters to go looking for it initially. Then again, maybe it doesn't, because if they are led to believe that it's their access out, because it is, one way or the other, that's reason enough to go finding it, and then they to go searching for it, and then finding it, they can discover that it also can do these other things. Let's see. So let's say wielders of the artifact can also travel to and from the DD at will once active. Requires a specific ritual to activate, including a specific location. So they can't just turn it on and dip in and out. Let's see here. Salamanders from Frozen. I watched the entire season of Pirates of Dark Water on Prime this weekend. Um, and it's kind of giving those kind of vibes. I will have to check that out then. Um, okay. Yeah, the world's giving those vibes. Well, check that out. It's, it is worthwhile when you are kind of brainstorming these things, by the way, yeah, to pull from all kinds of inspiration, avenues of inspiration, especially things that aren't necessarily other TTRPGs, right? You're going to find your most creative ideas come from pulling from other medias and blending them into stuff like this. There's a great book called Decoding Greatness that talks a lot about um, sort of techniques for finding inspiration. Really worth a read. If you want to check it out. Again, it's Decoding Greatness. Okay, cool, cool. All right. Well, we're pretty much at our time here, and we've already got a lot of stuff uh, that yeah, we've already got a lot of sort of tracks laid down for this. Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, everybody, for all these ideas. This is hugely helpful, and I'm so excited that we're getting so much interaction in the chat. That makes me really happy. So thank you for spending this hour with me to be creative and work on D&D and TTRPG stuff, and this adventure. So as always, we're gonna continue on next Monday, and so that's what the 14th, October 14th, if you're watching this in real time. And we'll pick up with our adventure there. If you've enjoyed this live stream, please like, comment, subscribe, all of the above. All that kind of stuff helps the channel, helps me keep doing this kind of stuff, and helps me get in front of more people so that we get more interaction and we all get to hang out with more cool DMs like you all. So thank you so much. And as always, if you are a Forever DM and you would like to take a spin as a player, come join one of my tables at startplaying.games/GM/RJ Kerr. Again, that's startplaying.games/GM/RJ Kerr. Thank you so much, and I will see you all next time. Bye, everybody.